people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy.
The undisputed super featherweight champion of the world, Alicia, the Bumgarner.
That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. It appears Motu, on the heels of the cancellation and subsequent postponement of the Ellie Scottney fight, will be keeping busy with veteran fighter Shannon O'Connell on the undercard of Yanni Bekalam-Kanalai versus Andrei Mikhailiovic, Friday, October 4th. The good people at No Limit were wise to find something for Mia to do. Find someone for her to fight, keep her sharp, keep her active, and keep her ready for her world title opportunity. I take it that because Mia's fighting in October, the fight with Ellie probably doesn't go down until early next year. Motu, who sports professional record of 19 wins with no losses, no draws, 7 knockouts. She's fighting Shannon. Shannon O'Connell, who sports a professional record of 24 wins with 7 losses, 1 draw, 12 knockouts, having been knocked out 3 times in 32 professional bouts. We haven't seen or heard that much from Shannon since she suffered that knockout loss to her domestic rival, then IBF champion Ebony Bridges. Shannon spent a lot of time tearing her down, talking her down, attacking her character, her boxing, her commitment to the sport, and her public image. That has to have been a humbling experience for Shannon O'Connell to be beaten in such one-sided fashion by somebody she thought so little of. And as stated, we haven't seen or heard a lot from her since that fight in December of 2022. She sat out all of 2023, came back earlier this year with a fight in May, and originally she was en route to fight Germany's own Vergil, Tszyu, a fighter that we've talked about once or twice here on the channel. She was supposed to be fighting Vergil on the 3rd. Now she's fighting Motu on the 4th. So you know that this was last minute. You know that this was impromptu. And I'd wager that they're likely offering Shannon better money for the Motu fight than the Vergil Tszyu fight. Just as well, she doesn't have to travel. The Vergil Tszyu fight was going to be in Vergil's neck of the woods. That was going to be in Germany. This fight with Mia is going to be in Shannon's native Australia. So that's one less headache. She doesn't have to travel. She doesn't have to be the away fighter. 41 years old to Motu, who's 34, few years younger. The edge has got to go to Mia. The momentum. Mia's younger. She fought 3 times last year, and she's already fought once this one, back in April. She's been the more active fighter of the two. They're both aggressive, they're both hard punchers, but Mia's got the edge. Mia's IBF interim status will likely be on the line. The winner of the fight, whoever it is, and I think it's going to be Mia, moves on to challenge Ellie Scottney for the blue belt for the IBF title. We still don't know what kind of injury Ellie Scottney suffered that ended up in this cancellation and subsequent postponement, because she has to fight Mia. Well, now she has to fight the winner of this fight. She's still on the hook with the IBF. Love Ellie Scottney, and I think she knows that.
Tone it down, lover boy.
But as stated, if Mia's fighting in October, I don't get the sense that the fight with Ellie gets rescheduled for November or December. That's too quick a turnaround for a world title fight. In all likelihood, if Ellie's gonna fight the winner of this fight, it'll be at some point early next year. Maybe January, maybe February, depending on what the injury is.
Back over to Mia and Shannon. This is a welcome addition to that show because both Mia and Shannon are action fighters, aggressive ones. So putting them both in the ring with each other, that makes for fireworks.
Shannon might get knocked out again. She might get knocked out again. She's 41 years old. She's already been knocked out 3 times before.
I'm going with Mia.
Good old New Zealand versus Aussie fight. I like it.
Catford.
What's Catford got to do with anything?
I'm not sure.
In other Aussie news, former champion Tszyu plans to bring the heat against IBF champion Bakram Murtazaliev. Tszyu is going from losing his world title to Sebastian Fundoria, a bloody battle which Tszyu suffered, a nasty injury, to taking on another world title holder in Bakram Murtazaliev. Oh, and he was initially hoping to face Vergil Ortiz this summer too, until the doctors told Tszyu that he couldn't yet get back in the ring. That's a different route than many other fighters have taken, but this is the way that Tszyu wants things to be.
It's the way that things should be. Old school, keeping an active schedule of fights, pursuing the best fights with the best available fighters.
My only hang-up with Tim Tszyu's next fight is that it's being fought in front of a Floridian audience instead of an Australian one, but still, there's no fear. It doesn't exist in my bloodstream at all, Tszyu told the media on September 24th in a conference call. I just want the biggest and the best challengers out there. Whoever they call the bad guy, give him to me. Feed him to me. Murtazaliev, 22-0 with 16 KOs, won the IBF junior middleweight title in early April, a week after Tszyu versus Fundora, knocking out Jack Colquet in the 11th round. Tszyu, 24-1 with 17 KOs, isn't overly familiar with his next opponent, but otherwise knows what to expect. Most people aren't. Most people haven't actually seen Bakram Murtazaliev in action because for the longest time, he was fighting on the non-televised portions of PBC shows, a result of all the step-aside deals he took to allow Jermel Charlo to unify this division.
That's how you can reconcile him being a world champion, but nobody really being familiar with him.
I haven't really watched much, Tszyu said. I know what he brings. He brings the heat. You hit him, and he keeps coming. Those types of styles, they're hard because they've got the dog in them. And that always presents a tremendous task ahead. I believe in my abilities, and everything's going according to plan. Nothing is supposed to be easy on the road to the top. There's no such thing as an easy camp or an easy fight. You want to get to the top and get the big bucks, you gotta go through the fire. The fire is what Tszyu faced in late March, when his head accidentally collided with Fundora's elbow toward the tail end of round 2 and opened a horrific gash on his hairline. Blood poured out and blocked his vision. Tszyu dropped a split decision and his WBO world title. The vacant WBC was also on the line. Both went to Sebastian Fundoria.
Tim's got a traditional view of the sport, a traditional view of boxing, traditional ideals and principles.
He wants the best fights with the best available fighters. He understands that the road to the top isn't going to be easy, and it's not supposed to be. I think that gives him an edge. In an era of fighters that want to be anything but fighters, anything but boxers. They want to be real estate agents and rappers, moguls,
social media influencers, all that serve as distractions.
Tim seems to understand that in this sport, you gotta focus up. You can't be distracted. And to make the big bucks, you have to be willing to go through the fire. The fire is also what Tszyu would have faced on August 3rd had he been cleared to fight Vergil Ortiz. Instead, Ortiz wound up winning a battle with Sergey Bohachuk by the skin of his teeth, and the fire is what we can expect on October 19th at the Caribe Royale in Orlando when Murtazaliev vs. Tszyu headlines on Amazon's Prime Video, the first and likely the only non-pay-per-view show that the PBC will be doing this year.
I saw the undercard for the show. Not too many familiar faces familiar to the PBC and their audience.
Fighters you're accustomed to seeing fighting on PBC shows. There's not much on there, likely because it's a non-pay-per-view. PBC boxing these days is tantamount to crowd-funded boxing, and the fighters' purses are likely being generated by whatever the pay-per-view brings in, since Amazon doesn't seem to be giving them much, if anything, semblant of a budget.
Without a budget, the only way you can hope to pay these guys is to build a fight as a pay-per-view. Therein lies a dilemma. Tszyu versus Murtazaliev is a solid fight, but in America, it's not pay-per-view worthy.
In Australia it is, but that's another story. You won't find many, if any, familiar faces on the undercard of this show.
No.
I'm bringing the heat, Tszyu said. Hopefully he doesn't take a step back. Hopefully there's not as much blood on my side this time. Hopefully there's going to be some relentless action, and we bring the fans a fight to remember. And if he gets beyond Murtazaliev, Tszyu can keep going for the best and the baddest out there, given that he is in a division full of talent, red-hot names, some big matchups to be made, he said. When you think about it, let's say in the near future, there's going to be so many crazy matchups to be made, it's so exciting. And he's right. He can have the rematch with Sebastian, or look to unify titles with Terrence.
Revisit the Vergil Ortiz fight.
I vaguely recall hearing that if all goes well in October, they mean to bring Tim Tszyu back in December in his native Australia against Ericsson Lubricant, and we'll see if that plan pans out. That if he takes care of Bakram Murtazaliev with no cuts, bumps, or scrapes, no severe injuries, he might have a quick turnaround.
Lubin sucks.
Vaguely recall some kind of falling out that Team Tszyu had with His Excellency, Mr. Turkey LL Sheik, but if they aspire to fight the likes of a Terrence Crawford, well, they're gonna have to work together, and that's a good fight, a very good fight.
There are some really exciting fights to be made.
Knows that. Everybody knows that you're strong. Everybody knows you're explosive. But what else can you show us? And to your second question, back to making that fight happen next year. I feel like sometime next year, June, mid-year, is something that can definitely work for both of us, me, him, top-ranked Golden Boy, and also stylistically, I know he's just gonna come forward and pressure and throw a lot of bombs. I just gotta stay focused, see those punches coming, counter him right in between, just like Boychik did. I think Boychik showed a lot of things that he wasn't ready or good at, and we can explore those things.
Was unbeaten up-and-comer in the junior middleweight division, Xander Zayas, talking about the potentiality of a Vergil Ortiz showdown at some point next year. Xander is going to be in action later today on the undercard of Mayer versus Ryan in the tri-state area, where there is a rather large Puerto Rican contingent. I say it all the time. Puerto Ricans on the East Coast are what Mexicans are to the West Coast. It's the same dichotomy. It's the same dynamic.
He sat down with Sean Zidale to talk about that matchup. It's a fantastic fight. One of the better fights that can be built into something big, something major. The next chapter in the Mexico versus Puerto Rico rivalry. I understand that Vergil is not a Mexican national. He was born in the States.
So he's not exactly Vicente Fernandez.
More of an Eric Estrada, Mario Lopez. But still, he is a fighter of Mexican descent. And this fight between Vergil and Xander seems more an adequate entry into that age-old Mexico versus Puerto Rico rivalry to me than the fight that we just saw between Canelo and Edgar Berlanga. That was supposed to be a Mexico versus Puerto Rico fight, Mexico versus Puerto Rico rivalry, though with context, we know there is no rivalry between Edgar and Canelo. No.
Canelo's in a different stratosphere to that guy. Everybody knew that going in, and that's how the fight played out. This fight between Xander and Vergil is a more even fight and a more adequate entry into that age-old rivalry.
Rosalind Sanchez.
They're both competing as junior middleweights now. They're not really that far off from each other. I want to say that Vergil has fought better fighters than the fighters that Xander has fought. He fought a two-time Olympian in Igis Kavaliauskas, a former champion, and Mighty Mo Hooker.
Leonard Garcia.
More recently, he took on former WBC interim champion Sergey Bohachuk, that I think is a tougher guy than anybody that Xander has fought so far. So in that way, experience has to go to Vergil a bit more than it goes to Xander. But Xander is actually bigger, the bigger guy.
Remember that Vergil moved up to junior middleweight, where Xander was already there.
Rosie Perez's titties. The edge in experience might go to Vergil, but the edge in height and length, that would go to Xander. The edge in power, I think they're about even. Xander is not the most destructive puncher at junior middleweight. I don't think he's come into his man strength yet. But Vergil,
he doesn't seem as devastating a puncher now as he did at 147. He just had that fight with Sergey. And remember, Sergey's been knocked out before. Vergil didn't knock him down, much less knock him out. So at least right now, in terms of power, it looks like they're about even.
Maybe after Vergil has a few more fights at this weight,
he'll further acclimate to it. He hasn't really been up there all that long. We'll see. But in terms of power, they look about even with each other, these two young guys.
Talia's under boob.
The base styles of the fighters. Vergil is a pressure guy, you can see that right away, whereas Xander is a boxer-puncher. The island of Puerto Rico has a way of producing very good, solid boxer-punchers. The boxer-puncher base style is to Puerto Rico what the pressure fighter base style is to Mexico, in a manner of speaking, locked in combat.
Victoria Justice.
Boxer punchers characteristically have a tactical edge over pressure fighters because they tend to alternate from offense to defense, using the pressure fighter's aggression and come forward style against them. What normally works for the pressure fighter doesn't work against the boxer puncher, and Xander is a boxer puncher. Though at what level is he competing with that base style when Vergil, comparatively, Vergil has fought better fighters than Xander? Xander still has some questions to answer. And this fight needs to happen. Many speculate that Canelo, Terence Crawford, they're in the twilight years of their careers. Alexander Usyk, he's in his late 30s. He's not going to be around forever. Neither is Fury. Wildest circle in the drain. AJ might be. These are the somebodies of this current era that is now coming to a close. The boxing fan, particularly the American boxing fan here in America, needs something to get their juices going. Something exciting. And this fight, it can help to fill that void. I have noticed recently that a lot of conversations we're used to having about a lot of fighters have since gone stale. There's nothing new to add. Nothing new to talk about. These two kids can usher in the new era!
Stop yelling.
De La Hoya versus Trinidad 2.0, anyone? Did you notice that Xander speaks fluent English? He's fluent in both English and Spanish. That allows Top Rank to market him to those two different demos, those two separate audiences. The English speakers, the Spanish speakers. Very good. He's not a Joe No Sabo like Danny Garcia.
Disgusting.
Like Edgar Berlanga! This allows Xander Zayas to really endear himself to that Puerto Rican audience on the island of Puerto Rico, not just the New Yorkers or the Philly Ricans, but the actual Puerto Ricans on the island of Puerto Rico, where he's from.
And Vergil?
Vergil looks like a cross between Juan Manuel Marquez and Roberto Duran.
I never noticed that.
One of the best hairlines in the junior middleweight division. So long as both boys stay in the winner's bracket, stay in character, keep fighting, keep winning, this could be the next major fight and the next installment in that Mexico versus Puerto Rico rivalry. The same as Trinidad versus De La Hoya. This fight can be that fight for this era. Top Rank and Golden Boy have a decent enough working relationship, at least better than what we see between them and Matchroom, where this fight is a distinct possibility in the North American continent. This could be big.
Evil Longoria.
It's fucking dickhead. You don't need to worry about who the leaders of the new school are going to be in the next era because they're already here if you've been paying attention. Zayas versus Ortiz could be a super fight.